I would like to put a few comments on the presentations, but not specific to any speaker. What I understood from some of the presentations, that the microfinance sector is not given due recognition by the government and authorities, but I think now that era has gone, and there is a very high level of acceptance by the authorities, and that is, I think, one of the indicators for that is the new regulation, which was talked at the keynote address this morning, as well as in this presentation, in this discussion. And also, if I understood correctly, there was an understanding that microfinance sector should not be regulated. I think that is a very incorrect or wrong statement to me as a practitioner and sector representative. I think, having understood the importance of the sector by the government is bringing positive regulations. The regulations are very positive. It has some issues. I am very sure that the SUA developing or designing the microfinance regulatory mechanism will take the concerns already expressed by the microfinance industry, as Mr. Karunaratne already said, and take up
in fairness to other people who will have questions, can you be brief, please?
That's all. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to, in fact, mention that when we talk about the state of the industry, there are some excellent publications from GTZ Promise Project. And in fact, in your conference bag, there is a microfinance industry report, which was, I think, authored by Roshini Fernando, who is in the audience. And it gives most up-to-date data. And you can, on page 10, it gives data on the cooperative rural banks, Samudri banking societies, Sanasa societies, etc., outstanding loans, deposit portfolio, etc. So you can have a look for most up-to-date data. Please, questions?
I had one question. I'm Koshi Mathai from the IMF. Mr. Vijayardhana and also Mr. Karunaratne picked up on this idea of commercial banks dedicating 5% of their resources to microfinance. How would that work? Is that meant to be, is that an aspiration, or is that an idea that commercial banks would find it commercially in their interest to dedicate those resources? Or if not in their commercial interest, would this be something that requires subsidies or perhaps some regulatory forbearance in the treatment of these kind of things on banks' books? That's one question. A related question, but actually much broader, is related to something Dr. Fernando said in the morning. If it is true, as Mr. Vijayardhana said, that microfinance has not contributed much to poverty alleviation so far, is the correct approach to promote more microfinance, or instead to promote other deficiencies in the system that people comment on all the time? For instance, a lack of finance for SMEs. Should we be promoting more finance to SMEs that can generate employment that then can help people come out of poverty? I'd be interested to hear what the panel has to say about those points.
Thank you very much for the question. And nobody mentions that it should be subsidized. What matters here is that the commercial banks should realize that there is enough profits available in the microfinance sector, and if they have to tap that profits, and it is actually a way of building up the clientele of the banking sector, because if we don't lend to these micro-level customers, if we don't bring them up as customers of the banks then will have to, in fact, lend only to people who will come to them and who will try to patronize them. So this is a situation where, just like a microfinance institution evolving into a main bank, a micro borrower will also evolve into a big borrower, big entrepreneur. And it has happened in many countries. In India, it has happened. Most of these big names that we hear today, when we read through their biographies, we find that all these people have started just like a very small people. So commercial banks will have to realize that there is a profitable sector available, and they will have to allocate money, because already the microfinance industry globally has developed the techniques and methodology of extend this money without incurring losses or without extending subsidies. That's the reason, because it's a kind of a thing now. If you have a bigger profit somewhere, you go for the bigger profits, not for the smaller profits here.
Thank you. Also, you mentioned about my question or the comment in the morning. In fact, the new evidence coming up says microfinance has not reduced poverty. And randomized control trials are also coming up with other more elaborate results that even health and education benefits that people are talking about have not been realized. The studies in India, in some African countries, as well as in the Philippines sort of support this conclusion. And in Sri Lanka, in fact, we have the highest microfinance outreach in the world already. If you add up the numbers and if you divide the population by the average household size, we have about 5 to 6 million households. And when you add up the numbers reached by institutions, small and big, state-owned and private, we have a very high outreach. My estimate is it is not less than 70%. That is the highest, one of the highest in the world. So we go to the question from Dr. Lum.
Yeah, thank you very much for this, Dagmar Lum from GTZ Promise Project. Thank you very much for these enlightening presentations. I would like to comment on this question of whether microfinance contributes to poverty alleviation or not. I think it might not if you think it's a panacea for all the poverty you will find somewhere, even not here in Sri Lanka. I think that is a point, but I think there is one point. I think Mr. Wijewardena has pointed it out in his presentation. If you target it properly, if you really look into the right groups of people, if you have the right products, and I think that is a very important point, not only loans or credits, but also savings, maybe insurance, other services for the people, I think then it can have an impact, a positive impact on poverty alleviation. And I think that is the justification for continuing with microfinance here in Sri Lanka also, because you still have these poverty pockets. You still have the regions where you need these financial services and other services for the people. But that was not my question. My question is, there are so many things changing here in Sri Lanka now. You know, the economic prospects are very positive. You know, the war is over. The Act is about to come. We'll have a new institution very soon. So I think the whole setting is changing. So my question would be, what is your outlook? What do you think maybe the microfinance industry will look like, let's say in 3 years? Maybe that is something the panel could enlighten us a little bit of.
Thank you, Dr. Loom. Excellent point. That is partly why we are moving towards from microfinance to inclusive finance, because microfinance has not been inclusive enough. And that is partly why it has had minimal impact on poverty. Now, I would like to invite the panel to answer the question that Dr. Loom raised.
Yes. Before go to your question, I would like to give a little bit comments about your question. Why bankers are not going to microfinance rapidly or aggressively? Because you know your microfinance industry, what is the situation? There are two things for the commercial bank. Because I was 2 years as a chairman of the one commercial bank. When I discussed with the key people in that commercial bank, they also mentioned two things is very relevant. One is administrative cost is very high, then time consuming. Commercial bank better to go to the big clients. It is struggling with my clients, my officers also in our bank, younger people, they want to go to the good clients with asking big money. So we have to change their attitude, educate them and reactivating them and go back to the poor people. So that's our area. That's why people, the most of commercial bank not going. Except Mr. Vijay Tilaka when he was in the HNB, he take initiatives like Gamipu Budua. He is the only bank support for my bank when I started 1978. No other bank support to me because he realized the value of our bank. We are trying to outreach poor people. Then your question, yes, after the situation change in Sri Lanka, micro industry field also we need lot of innovation. That is why I end up my speech. We need sustainable innovation. Particularly in North and Eastern province, when we started to work, we need universities involvement. After 30 years war, nobody has experience how to face this type of situation. So we need new approach, new innovation. So now we are thinking to link with the universities, and university students can come to field as action researchers. Then the Jaffna, we are trying to develop some relationship. I already had the discussion with the Vice Chancellor of Jaffna University. They are ready to send their children, undergraduate, to go to the rural, the grassroots level and do some kind of new planning and new innovation. Then even in Greater Colombo, we started the work with the urban poverty, and we link with the Japura University, Javardhanapura University, Faculty of Economics, and the Department of Economics. And those final year students, they are coming with us, and they will go to Santee. We try to cover about 30,000 Santee outlets, the poor households, and do 6-month research. And based on that research, we have to do new type of microfinance approach. Otherwise, we are just following traditional approach. So we need a lot of new things. Technology side, environmental side, then the educated academic group also must involve in this type of things.
Thank you, Dr. Kirivandania. If you look at the mainstream financial sector, what has moved the financial sector in the mainstream? It is financial innovation, process, product, and organizational innovation. We need the same thing as Dr. Kirivandania suggested, that innovations in microfinance. Then that is why we are lack of innovations has in fact contributed to the relative stagnation of the microfinance industry in Sri Lanka. We need innovations. We need not copycats. Vijay, Mr. Vijayawardhan, you want to respond to these questions? I'm surprised that, at the end of 2009, unregulated, though inadequately regulated microfinance institutions of different sorts in this country had $1.4 billion equivalent deposits. I am very nervous when I look at these numbers. I am sure that in the audience, people have some questions about that. Peter, you want to bring some insights from Cambodia into this discussion?
Nimal.
Yes, please.
First, I really like this question that was just asked. How does it look 3 years from now, the financial sector, in terms of inclusiveness? My question is, we know that there are many constraints that exclude people from access to the financial service. And here in Sri Lanka, I'd like to know from all the panel members, what in your view is the #1 constraint here in Sri Lanka?
#1 constraint. Is that right?
Number one constraint.
Yeah. #1 constraint moving forward.
I think the #1 constraint is the funds, availability of regular flow of funds. If you have a regular flow of funds, the MFIs will be able to take it forward, but we don't have it.
No questions about savings, poor people's money, safety, protection. Are you happy? If I am a depositor, I won't be happy. Yes, please. Can we please get the microphone to that gentleman over there?
My understanding is that the most important constraint is the absence of a microfinance policy on the part of the government. The practitioners and other stakeholders do not know where the government stands with regard to microfinance. What their interests are, what they do like, what they don't like, what is their vision, what is their mission, what objectives do they have, what kind of plans they have. Do they like it? We don't know. So it is very necessary that there is a plan on the part of the government, or rather a policy on the part of the government, so that the path would be clear for us. We know